What is going on? Ushanka here. And today, it's Super Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. Alright? We got a little bit of a thing going on here with um, who's going to be the nominee to run up against Trump in November of 2020. Okay. Now, it's sort of between right now at this moment as I'm making this video, it's between Biden and Sanders. All right. Now, things are still going on, votes are still being counted, but that's the way it's looking. It's between the two of them. But when making this video, I want to specify specifically on Bernie Sanders, okay, who is a democratic socialist, okay, and in my opinion, and I would assume a lot of opinions of other people, is really a communist, okay. So, let's go here for a minute. What is the difference between a socialist and a communist? Okay, communist wants the government to own basically control of everything. They control your living, they control how much you make, they control where you work, they control everything, okay? Socialism is sort of like that. Almost the same practically. Where basically socialism is where the government is the government, but they're not going to take you out back because they have different beliefs than you and, put a bullet in the back of your head or send you to a gulag. It's more like we want to give you free things, benefit of the government. But how are they the same? Well, in reality, socialism and communism both share the same beliefs in the system. The system is that with communism is that the government, yes, they have a stronghold grip on you, and you have no say against that government, and you could be killed with disagreeing with that government or sent off to a re-education camp by that means. And with communism, on that being said, like what I just said, that could happen. That has happened, and that still happens today in our world that we live in 2020. Venezuela, for example. So, with communism and socialism being that you have a candidate who is basically, Bernie Sanders is trying to run for president here in the United States, where democratic socialism is what he claims is basically the government is there for you, and the government is going to make everything free, and free for this and free that, free whatever, free healthcare, free college, free moderate wages, kind of shiz like that. Okay. Well, the communists did the same thing, i.e., Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, being government run, heavily government run, offered free healthcare. They offered free living. They offered free a lot of things, and you had no other way to argue against it. And basically, that whatever doctor, whatever job you got, that's what you got, basically. And with socialism is basically trying to put a nicer picture. Sorry, that's my dog. Trying to put a nicer picture on communism. Okay, trying to say, well, we're not going to follow down that road of Marxism or Leninism or Stalinism with gulags and excuse me, Stalinism or, anything like that that's going to, you know, oppress a lot of people. We want to be able to sort of make everything work to where the government is in power. They have power. People do have the power. They're getting the wealth. They're getting whatever they want, they desire. But, everything's going to be free. Everything's going to be free for that. Okay? And that can only last for so long. Okay? Because when it comes to free this and free that, everything is a market economy. Okay? And when I bring up market economy, I like to also bring up Denmark and a lot of the Nordic countries in Europe, which by, I guess, modern European government standards is modern socialism, okay, which Bernie Sanders is running off of. So, basically, Bernie Sanders wants to take European socialism and bring it here to the United States. Okay? When in fact, in 2015, the Prime Minister of Denmark said that we are not a socialist economy, and he encouraged Bernie Sanders to not say that we are a socialist country. I can't pronounce his name because without butchering it, and but just go to 2015 Denmark Prime Minister and you'll find out who he was. But he said on live TV that we are not a socialist economy. We are a market economy. Their socialist ideals come from government programs, basically. Certain government programs, all right, which, obviously will raise the taxes and raise a lot of the, wages and, I wouldn't say wages, but raise a lot of the money taken out of people's incomes to go to these government programs, okay? But for the most part, Europe is not a socialist economy, okay, for the most part. Because if they were, we'd be seeing a bunch of little Venezuelan situations happening in Northern Europe, okay, which we're not. It's just the government stepping in and taxing everybody left and right to basically their government benefiting from the people for the most part, but yet not so much to where they're not sucking everybody dry. I mean, they're still commercing throughout the world. They're still doing things. They're still having trades, and people can buy and do whatever they want, but it's just the price of living is very expensive, like in California, basically. So, with that being said, the reason why I'm making this video is because it's just so damn scary for the fact that we have Bernie Sanders, who, as of me speaking right now, is running for nomination for possible presidency of the United States. Okay. Now, Bernie Sanders claims he's a socialist. He claims that he is a socialist, a moderate, democratic socialist, okay? And majority of the people who eat that up are usually college students, old school communist socialists from the 60s, the 70s, whatever, what have you. And they feel like he's the best guy. Like capitalism has been here, done that. Capitalists are the rich, evil people that run the world, and we have no way of, getting a dollar out of that. Well, let's think about that. Let's think about how, where this guy Bernie Sanders, he wants to have this socialist economy, socialist, a democratic socialist economy. But yet, at the same time, let's go back to his past. Let's see who were his influences. What did he praise back in the day when he was a younger man in office? Does he still abide by these rules? Does he still abide by these beliefs? Uh, now in 2020? Well, he's gone on live TV saying that Fidel Castro was not a bad guy. I mean, this was just this past Sunday from this date that I'm making this video on 2020 with Anderson Cooper, saying that, well, Fidel Castro didn't, he wasn't, yeah, his regime was bad, but not everything was bad. He had a literacy program and some good health care. Okay. Well, what kind of literacy were they distributing in Cuba during that time when Castro took over? Well, I know Castro was backed by the Soviet Union, so we can only imagine that Castro was definitely heavily influenced by the book of Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto. So we can automatically assume that if a communist dictator is going to be basically bringing literacy to people who don't know how to read, peasants, farmers, what have you, they're obviously going to be taught what? By a communist dictator who is implementing these programs. What are they going to be taught? And it doesn't take a rocket scientist. It's going to be propaganda. It's going to be communist propaganda from Karl Marx, from Lenin, from Stalin. It's going to be propaganda from communist dictatorships in that ideology. So yeah, you take a peasant from the fields and say, oh, we want to educate you. Okay. Well, what are you going to educate them with? Just pure propaganda for a regime and for an ideology that obviously has never lasted long. So, the Soviet Union collapsed. That's a way of saying it. Pol Pot from Cambodia. We have currently Venezuela. We have North Korea. All communist dictatorships, propaganda, praising the government, praising everything. So when it comes down to what Bernie Sanders believes in, and his mentors, and his revolutionary ideas, it comes down to this. He claims he's a socialist. He's not that bad of a communist, or he's not a communist to begin with. He's not a communist. He's not, by his standards. But his previous ideologies are what set him apart. I mean, for God's sakes, in 1988, he had his honeymoon in the former Soviet Union. Okay? The former Soviet Union. And there's footage of it on YouTube of him going to the Soviet Union and honeymooning in Moscow during that time. And he praised that their culture programs were great, and this and that, and whatever was going on good during the time of the Soviet Union. Now, what drives me crazy right now, what sort of is just mind-boggling to me, is the fact that somebody like this came this close to this night as a nominee to run up against the current president of the United States, Donald Trump. It don't even have to be Trump. It could be somebody else. Whoever else it could have been. It could be somebody else other than Trump. But the fact that somebody like this came this close to running against the current president of the United States, a socialist, communist, whatever you want to call it. To me, it's all the same. And you're going to have people that will judge this video and say, well, socialist and communist are two different things. Okay, we got that. But how about this? What if Nazism and communism are all the same thing? They're both the same. Okay? What did the USSR stand for? What did it stand for? United Soviet Socialist Republic. Okay. That is what the USSR stand for. Okay. Socialist is in the name of the country. That was formerly Russia. That was Russia, but the USSR, then now Russia again. Okay. Okay. And let's talk about Nazi Germany. The build-up to Nazi Germany, we had... Nazi is basically a slang word for what it really was, which was NASDAP. N-A-S-D-A-P. Which, in German, I can't say it. I don't know how to say it. I'll butcher it. But it was basically Nationalist Socialist Germans Workers' Party. Socialism. Socialist Workers' Party of Germany. So, by different beliefs, a lot of people like to think that, well, the way of communism is to the left. Communism is far to the left. That's far left. And fascism is far right. Okay? And when they say the far right, like Republicans and the Proud Boys, libertarians kind of, they consider those people the right. Okay? And for the left, the far leftists, and for the left, you have Democrats, you have communists, all that stuff. But in reality, they're both the same, because they've had the same name in their little acronyms for the longest time, the whole time. So you have the USSR, which had Soviet socialism in their name for their country, and you had the Nationalist German Workers' Party from the 1930s, 20s and 30s, that had socialist in their name. So what's the difference? Well, the difference isn't even that much. The difference is that you had two bullies living on the same block. Nobody liked them. Nobody respected them. But yet they were still there, and people had to deal with them. And it was only a matter of time before one bully got so fed up that where they would eventually fight, one bully ended up killing another bully. And look what happened. The Soviet Union, the way of the commie, the way of the Communist Manifesto survived is because, well, of this. They only murdered their own people. That's it. In any communist country, communists murdered their own people. That's it. They could take their socialist ideologies, they could take their communist beliefs, however they tried to refine it, or how they first implemented it, or tried to fix it, whatever. They basically had the same intentions, just like the fascists. And the reason why the communist ideology is still around in 2020, over 200 years. For 200 years, that the Communist Manifesto, the ideologies of Karl Marx is still around, is because, well, when that form of government was implemented, it wasn't diverted to other people in other countries. That's why fascism is not a big deal anymore, is because, well, when everyone thinks of fascism, they think of Nazism. And what happened when Nazism happened? The Jews died. The Holocaust happened. Which I get. It is a very, very, very disturbing thing to try to comprehend how people can do that to another group of people. It's very bad. It's very wrong. But when it comes to communism, when they have basically dictatorship, government controlled this, government controlled that, people have to be sworn to their government, which is both fascism and communism. They both act the same way. But it's only because of the fact that communism, those countries that adopted it and fully indulged themselves in it, they got rid of their own people. That's okay. But when it comes to fascism, oh, well, Hitler killed other people, Jews, which I get is an atrocity in itself. But fascism is no longer followed anymore, simply because Hitler killed another race. That's it. I'm not praising that, but think about it. Hitler killed another race. That's genocide. But as Stalin said, a single death is a tragedy. 1,000,000 deaths is a statistic. And that's what Joseph Stalin said when he was in charge of the USSR. So it's okay for a communist country to kill their own, liquidate their government, liquidate their people that they disagree with. But for fascism, that we have to remember and be against because they killed another race, that we better think about that to make sure that there's not another Hitler, there's not another fascism, there's not some form of Italian fascism or something like that, to where fascism needs to be squashed dead. Do you see what I'm getting at here? They're both BS. They don't need to exist. Marxism, Leninism, Stalinism, Maoism, whatever ism, communism has been a cancer on this planet for so long, and it's been an ideology followed by generation after generation because simply they didn't go after another country and try to liquidate them. Both ideologies are wrong. One has been put to bed and vilified to be remembered, to where the world says we should never let this happen again. But now with communism, socialism, both basically the same things, to where the government is in charge, oh, well, it could be done differently. The Soviets never did it right. The Maoists never did it right. The Pol Pots never did it right. Venezuela, they did something wrong. North Korea, they did something wrong. They're doing it wrong. It's not the right way of socialism. If it's been around for 200 years in all these countries that have been involved with socialism, communism ideologies, and they've either fallen or they exist today, and yet their people are under a intense tyrannical regime, how has that not been put to bed? Basically. I'm sorry for the long rant, but it's Super Tuesday, and this is how close America has gotten to voting in a communist, a socialist. I'm not going to call him a socialist. He is a communist at heart. For praising Fidel Castro, for praising the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, for honeymooning in the Soviet Union and saying that bread lines are a good thing because the rich get fatter and, at least people have to wait for food in line because they're still going to get food because poor people never get food at all? Please. This is ridiculous. people need to wake up, start reading a book, watching a documentary, and start understanding that this is how close our generation is getting to. People are forgetting the Soviet Union. People are forgetting Nazi Germany. People are forgetting a lot of things that happened over 75 plus years ago. Because when they hear something new, they're like, oh yeah, let's take it in. Let's give it a chance. Let's see where it goes. But no. Communism, socialism, fascism, all in the same boat. Government run everything. When the government takes over and when the greed starts getting bigger, you get poorer, you get more oppressed, and they stay in power. That is what they all have in common. People need to wake up and not just study fascism and not just study Nazi Germany. They need to study the real effects of what happened during the Soviet Union. What happens in North Korea, in Venezuela, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong. It's been going on for over 200 years, this ideology. This ideology needs to be put to bed. It's done. And all these college kids, all these millennials who go to these state colleges, state universities, city colleges, what have you, they all praise socialism and communism. And I simply believe it's because that socialism and communist ideology, that country, they never wiped out anybody else but themselves. And that's why it's still around, because it was never made a big deal. It was never made something. And I'm not saying the Holocaust was just a big deal. I'm saying is that because, the Soviets never wiped out, Afghanistan. So, please, we got to get the word out to end Marxism, end communism, end socialism, end big government, stop big government, and keep government from getting bigger. Whether you're living in the United States or living in another country. Socialism, communism, fascism is not the way to go. Please like, dislike, share, whatever. That's my opinions on tonight. So this is Yushanka. We'll talk to you later.